Hi, I'm Alex Mitchell and I'm the creator of Cancer Stories. Cancer Stories is a video diary program which is designed to help people like yourself manage their cancer. And the key aim is to record previous patients' experiences, really a wide variety of cancers. And these are patients who are genuine, real patients from Leicestershire who've given their consent to allow us to record their story onto DVD or the internet. What we ask those patients is really to give a brief account over 30 or 60 minutes. How did they manage with their diagnosis? And hopefully by watching their account, you'll be able to pick out some common themes from one or more of those videos. And those common themes might be things like what resources are available locally or nationally, or how do families cope, or how do people themselves manage with those awkward stages, either the initial diagnosis or the complications of treatment, or perhaps psychological and emotional complications, which are sometimes overlooked. So overall, we hope that by watching the video diary program, you'll be able to take some positives from other people's accounts, and hopefully that will help you better cope with your situation, whatever that is at the current time. Thanks for watching.
Hazel Oliver. I'm Leicester born and bred, parents from Buckinghamshire and one from Leicestershire. Brought up here, married, 5 kids. My job, I was trained as a dental nurse for a long time, went into childminding. I've then gone from childminding into teaching, teaching adults on childcare and education. Sitting on various committees and boards of various different things all over the country, so a vast experience in many different areas. To have it all stopped short with a tumour that's going back to being a mum at home.
So I'm here with Hazel Oliver today. Hazel has agreed to come and talk to us about her diagnosis and also what followed the diagnosis, which is how she got back into the normal swing of things. But we will talk about that in a bit. But let's talk about the initial period, the early period, that difficult time when you were heading towards a diagnosis, but you weren't maybe sure what was going on. What were the first symptoms that came along?
The first symptoms I had was noticing that my eyelashes were touching the lens of my glasses and thinking something's not right here. Being sent off to eye casualty, 2 days to get to see consultants, and then saying we can't find out what this is, we don't know, we think it might be thyroid, it might be something else, we'll get some scans done. Get scans done, the whole process took a week, and then you see the consultant to say, actually you've got a tumour. It's a meningioma, it's there, and it's the shock is absolutely enormous. To tell you what it is, to tell you normally that they wouldn't do anything, but because this was affecting the sight as well, with some double vision, go, so what happens, It's just horrendous going through that. The initial shock of being told, going away, having a damn good cry, and seeing what you can do, and then thinking, well, okay, I'm affected, what's it going to have with the rest of the family? How's it going to affect them? Coming to terms with that is extremely difficult. You have to sort of pull yourself together and just tell everybody.
Now, how do you think that process was handled by the medical profession at that time?
There was Very little on the explanation. There was virtually nothing on the way of support to get through that initial process. The whole going from that initial diagnosis in January through to having the operation to remove the tumour didn't happen until July. That is a long time. There were lots of delays en route, but there was no backup and support to this is what it's going to be. It wasn't until you actually go in to have the surgery done does anybody sit down and tell you what some of the side effects might be, but they don't tell you the whole of it. That is a case of find out for yourself. That is hard.
So really, you're saying that medical information could be either better organised or more comprehensive from an early stage?
From an early stage, it needs to be very comprehensive. You need to know the risks that, yes, if you're having surgery to your head, to your skull, there is risks that you may end up having fits, you may end up not coming through this at all. Those side effects, yes. What they didn't point out was things like you're going to end up, you may lose the sight. That it was the whole point of the operation was to stop that happening. When you come out of the anaesthetic, it's a lot worse than anybody thought. The effects of actually losing part of your skull with subsequent ops, nobody goes through what that effect is going to be and people's reaction to you. That something needs to be there because it can be so hurtful and so people see somebody that's had a head injury or something, if they think because you've got an injury your brain's not working, so they're not going to talk to you, they're frightened of you. You have to make the first moves. But getting there is no.
And what would you say to the members of the medical profession, nursing profession, who say, well, I hear what you're saying about information, but we don't want to scare people, we don't want to give people too many negatives at an early stage?
There is a lot of attitudes on whether do you tell people, particularly with children, do you tell them what's going on? If you give them all the scenarios that could happen, if they don't happen, you can cheer. Because it didn't happen to me, I feel great. If it does happen, it's not something to be frightened. You're aware of it. You're then prepared. So it's giving you all the information takes away the fear. You deal with it. If it doesn't happen, you're so happy and perfect that you thought I come through that without these things. If it does happen, you go, fine. But if you don't know, you are thrown into what am I to expect? What's going to happen? How do I deal with this? There's nothing.
Now, one side is information, isn't it? But another side, hopefully going hand in hand, is support. Support may be informal from family and friends, but it may be from healthcare professionals as well.
There needs to be the knowledge or the information there to where to go. If you need help, if you need support, what is going to happen? Who do you contact? There's two sides of me. Yes, there's tumour one side, there's facial palsy the other. Okay, there's a big gap. But neither have had any support at any time as to where to go. It's the consequences. It's dealing with families' reactions to you, comments from your own kids. I can't remember what my mum should look like. That's a knock-on effect. To go through brain surgery, from your family's point of view, they are completely worried and stressed out. It has an effect on them. Their ability to do anything, to go to school, it has effect on partner, on husband. It's a knock-on effect for everybody, which nobody takes into account when you're in treatment, and it's not. There is no backup. It's very often go away and deal with it yourself.
No, I would accept definitely that where we sometimes fall short delivering care to patients, we even more fall short for relatives and caregivers, and they're sometimes left somewhat forgotten in the process, but as you say, can be very much picking up on that emotional distress as they go. So we should do definitely more there. Now, you mentioned about your particular cancer being one that had physical effects that other people could see, and that could be in the family or people in the street, isn't it?
It has had physical effects. The first operation, they put the part of the skull was a slight dent. It wasn't so noticeable, but it's affecting the things like your balance and where you can go, what you can see, how you can go through doors. Can you get through the day in doing things, and people don't notice it, but people also tend to be assume you're drunk if you can't walk in a straight line. Those sorts of things have a knock-on effect on you and how you react, and people tend to be quiet and not say anything, but tend to be actually quite frightened of you.
How do you manage that problem of having visible signs that other people may misinterpret?
I'm a very positive thinker, and I tend to be, having been in teaching, having taught people with suddenly having no facial movement, which gives the facial expressions all wrong. My reaction was, this is what I look like, but I can still talk, I can still see, I can still listen to you. There are parts of I can't see, but I can hear what's going on. And if you don't like my face, okay, fine, that's okay, but it's still me. And then it's down to actually getting over that, putting a smile into what you say, and you get over their fear. That's the bit, but it's having the courage to do that.
There's a tricky bit in there, I think, which is still feeling it is you, because sometimes when there's a change to your appearance or your sense of well-being, you kind of want to reject this new you want to think, I wish I was the old me still. It's very hard sometimes to accept the new you where you feel you're at a disadvantage compared to previously.
It is very difficult to have the courage to have that positive attitude. There have also been times when I don't want to go out, I don't want to have to go through and put on the smile and the happy personality, when that's not what I feel, when you're actually feeling scared. This reaction going, have I got to go through it all again? It becomes repetitive, but it can be take you down and think, I'd rather avoid that and stop in. And yes, you go through that. Very, very much so at times. Yeah, I can hide. Good at hide. No, don't want to go.
Let's talk a little bit about what happened to you, like a step by step, because we haven't said for viewers of this what really happened to you next. And you mentioned about surgery, which probably was at Queen's Medical Centre.
It was.
But what were the stages in getting back to where you are now? What were the steps you had to go through?
First lot of surgery was actually cancelled because I couldn't match blood. That was actually a very good thing at the time. It was very, 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 very upsetting to find you're on a ward and you're prepared and everything, and then it doesn't go ahead. But it was a great benefit because I can actually see other patients who had surgery come out of theatre and be talking and reacting. It takes away all the fear that somebody giving you brain surgery, you might not come back, and that had all gone. So that was the good side of it. After the surgery itself, it knocks you for six. It took me several months before I could get up and move around, before I could do things. Going from A to B was difficult. Swelling, knowing that your sight that you were so used to was so totally different. That you can't see things, that there's a patch missing, that you can't judge distances. walking through a door, well, if you open a door but you can't see it on one side of your head, it's a good job I'm the size I am because I'm bouncy material and bumped into it and bounce off. But you end up with lots of bruises and bits and pieces because you can't see what you're doing. People around you assume that you can and can't accept that there is differences in you and that what you do and what you see is different. And that's sometimes a constant battle with your own family, is to know they know you but they don't know the new you.
In a way, they've got to learn that new you as well as you learning it. And that's difficult for them, isn't it?
That's very, very difficult for them. And I also found that diplomacy goes out the window, and there is this change in you as a person, that diplomacy's gone and you tend to speak the truth. At point blank range can be quite cutting. Actually learning to adjust that back is extremely difficult as well, and that's shock to the family.
Was that an effect of the tumour or something else?
Don't know. Nobody can put a finger on it. There are effects to the tumour which, again, nobody knew and nobody has told you. And removing it, there are some good effects, there are some weird ones. Good effects were my hands and feet were numb and nobody could explain why. The position of the tumour had said it has nothing to do with that, but within 4 days my feelings all back. Temperatures, everything wonderful. Downside was things like going to sleep. Since the tumour, it's not a slow go to sleep. And it isn't a slow come round and awake, it's instant. It's like you're awake 1 minute and then you're gone. It's like somebody switched the lights off. And waking up is one breath, you're awake, you're asking questions, you're talking, there's nothing else. It's weird. And it's affected the hearing in such that, whether it's to do with a sight loss or difficult to put into it. Somebody in another room eating a packet of crisps, it's like somebody scratching the crisps beside your ear. The sound can be so intense.
What type of tumour was it that was diagnosed?
It's a meningioma. Now, the type I got apparently is slightly different to what is normal. Normally it will affect the meninges, which is the lining around the brain. Mine was not. It was within the bone, and the bone had thickened. So it actually didn't affect the meninges at all. But it's the bone around the socket. Roof of the socket, the wing of the socket, there is still some there.
On the left-hand side?
On the left-hand side, yes.
And
the pulse is on the right side. Not connected.
What residual amount of tumour has been left there after the treatment?
2 or 3 centimetres, a couple of centimetre or so, so that it's affecting the optic nerve. The good side is it's extremely slow growing. It probably took 10 to 15 years to grow to be noticeable anyway. Nobody wants to do anything ever again if they can possibly avoid it because of my reactions to surgery, to anaesthetics, to titanium. Forget it. I'm going to live with what it is. All well and good, but I'm going to be forced to do anything again.
So how are you doing kind of now, having been through all this?
Getting used to me still. I know what I can do. I know I'm not as able-bodied as I was. The effect of the balance has had, if you can't see where you're going clearly and your balance is affected, it affects the speed at which you walk and the way you walk. Knock-on effects is back and hip played up. So everything's slowed down. It's getting used to that, having walked 5-6 miles a day, to be going, struggling to walk 50 yards. Different coping with being able to stand, being able to do things around the house and to be able to see what we're doing. It's a different ballgame. You can. It's courage, determination and lots of support as well.
A lot of people will be tempted to just focus on those things they can't do anymore, the things they've had to give up in a way. But are you able to look at things you can do, possibly even start new things that you hadn't thought of before?
Yes, you can look at what you can do. Sometimes it's about getting people around you to accept the things you can do. There is also this people you care about, your partners and your husbands, are sometimes trying to compensate for what you can't do by doing things for you. So some of that is taking away your independence and your willingness to do it. That in itself can be a problem. But knowing what you can do and knowing what your limitations are, knowing how long you can do things, instead of being able to work, just sleep 5-6 hours out of 24 to sleep 10-12 is a vast difference. There've been other side effects that's taken a long time to find out about. Pituitary gland's affected, doesn't produce cortisol that you need, doesn't produce the growth hormone that you need now. That's taken a long investigative process and a lot of badgering from me to say it's not just post-operative that's the problem. It's taken a lot of time to get to that. And the family, it limits what you can do. The lack of sight, because there is a little bit of sight in one side, but it produces double vision, affects what you can read and what you can see without it being blurred. It's getting the help available. I did go back to work at one time. I did go into teaching until more tumour was found and had to be taken away. Going back to work, reduce your hours, do what you can do. Still got the wonderful results from students, brilliant, but you can't do as much. Different.
It's difficult to accept that change, isn't it?
It is very difficult to accept that you have that enthusiasm to want to do it, to be an external marker, and to find that actually coping with the amount of marking that was needed to be done, you couldn't do as much as you wanted to. So it's...
Sometimes there's a problem though, that if you stop doing that activity because you're limited in how much you can give and maybe not fulfilling the role as much as you would like, you then feel there's a gap there. Not doing your work role leaves leaves a hole.
It can leave you with a gap, but it can also be a blessing, because if you can replace work with other things, doing the things you want to do, going out when you want to, not having the commitment to go to work anymore. It's wonderful being retired. It gives you a different sort of freedom that you perhaps didn't get in a job. And takes a lot of the pressures off. Well, the positive in me is saying, well, I like this, which is really nice. It can be frustrating not really, because it's also the help and support that you can get going back to work was something nobody actually pointed out to me. The Access to Work scheme that was never pointed out to me until the work found out about it and somebody knew something about it. There is help available, there's computers and all that sort of help available there if you've got some disabilities. But maybe the information that it's there needs to be put in earlier. Then there's always something to look forward to. That's important.
Let's have a talk for a few minutes about what resources you've come across as part of this journey and coping with the diagnosis and the aftermath. What have you found out that you found valuable?
The access to the equipment, the fact that you can have equipment to use a computer that enlarges it. You can have cameras that will read documents for you and put it on in a large format on a screen, tables, etc. That sort of introduced me to things like RNIB, which you didn't think you were going to need, because again, hospitals don't introduce you to that. It's not something they tell you about. But it's there, and there is help and support there. The fact that nobody told me that you can, if you've lost the sight or a sight's affected, you can actually be registered as partially sighted. But nobody tells you that. Nobody tells you how it's done. You go to your GP, he doesn't know. Consultants know, but do they? Some do, some don't. It's knowing what is there and what is out there. It's the when I lost the facial movement, there was no help given, and then that is very, very traumatic. Because you look normal until somebody speaks to you, and then it's back off. Go the books up, go the papers, and people are scared. There is help out there, there are charities out there, but again, who knows about it? If I hadn't seen an article in the newspaper, a bit on television, I would know nothing. I think it is necessary to have the information that is out there all collected and given. Whether you use it or not is up to you, but if it's there, it can give you the help and support on how to cope with it.
Now there's also the internet these days. There's some support groups, informal volunteer support groups, voluntary ones.
Lots of people are not internet aware or know how it works. I'm one of those. People of my age range are very often anti-computers, anti-internet, don't understand it. So that is it's got to be backed up with something somewhere else. Support groups, there are support groups about, from my husband's point of view, he's having had heart bypass. There are support groups, but do they meet the needs of the person coming to terms with it? The answer is probably not. Some of them are about just fundraising, but not about helping the patient in the right way. So there's got to be two ways of looking at it.
Now another area which I think is valuable for some people is meeting other patients. That is through support groups sometimes, but it can sometimes be informal, like through the hospital you meet somebody who you're particularly inspired by, or you might be supporting them in a way, usually two-way. What's your experience of meeting other patients?
My experience of meeting other patients, when I was actually in hospital in Oxford, somebody came in who had got to face dealing with a potential aneurysm, which is an extended blood vessel in the brain. She was absolutely terrified. And I just spoke to her, I said, don't worry, I've seen people come back, you're going to be okay, and I'll be here and talk to you. And she said, you're the only person that's actually said it's going to be okay. And to see, when she came back onto the ward, and she could see me and said, you're back, that made the world of difference to her. And we've stuck up a friendship from that. But it also, talking to her son that was there waiting for her, it eased his worries. That is what is needed, somebody that can give that there and then and know the support out there. And
making that available is actually quite important, but it's tricky, isn't it, to for that informal level of support to be around all the time?
It's very tricky to be around. It's being able to perhaps see people's reactions in their faces. Their faces will tell you whether their speech doesn't, whether they're frightened or not. If you can pick up on that, you can go in and ease the pain and ease the worry. That's probably been a habit of mine, is people watching for years. So yeah, for me, it's relatively easy to do, but it's that having that courage to talk to somebody.
Let's think about this whole time that you've been, dealing with your diagnosis. What's been the most difficult thing for you to manage personally, would you say, over that time?
With the diagnosis?
Well, and everything that followed.
And everything, it's coping with it. It's coping with the effects on the family. Seeing my son miss out on the levels of exams he wanted because he's waiting for mum to have the op, or what's going to happen. It's done all that. Not once, 2, 3 times, to see daughters go through mental health problems themselves because they are so concerned about you. It's how do you broach that? How do you deal with them? You've always been the one that's there for the support. But if you're going through it yourself, can you split yourself again? And you have to put yourself on hold to deal with the family that's close to you. It's learning how to get people to talk to you because they're scared they may say something that's going to upset you, or it's the other way around. You see their anxiety and their anguish, and you can sometimes actually not do anything because they don't believe you. And they need somebody else to say it's going to be okay. That is probably the most difficult. Myself, coping with it, if I've got something to say, I'll say it. I will ask questions. If you're seeing consultants or not, I'll ask questions. If you see the house doctor and he's not got the answers, we'll find out. Go prepared with all the questions you want to ask, all the symptoms that you want them to know about. I have it written down, I have it prepared and ready, and I have a set of questions. And sometimes you can be fobbed off, we don't know. We don't know is okay, but the silence is the difficult. I would say to anybody in the medical, be open and be honest with your patients and tell them. It takes away the fear, it makes coping with it easier. Don't tell them the truth. Don't do that.
And from a patient point of view, I think the lesson I'm taking from that is that you should be proactive. You should try to get the answer you want.
Yes.
People may be afraid that they would be thought badly of if they do that. Well, what would you say to that?
It's you yourself, you have to deal with it. At the end of the day, it is not how people think of you, it's how you think of yourself. Can you live with yourself? If you have the truth and all of it, you will find a way through to cope with it. If it's hidden from you, or it might upset you, with cancer patients, we're not going to tell you. This was the case with mother-in-law. We're not going to tell you she's got cancer, we're not going to tell you it's finalised. And it's a short road. I'm not going to tell you that because it might be upset. If she'd known, she would have dealt with it. She would have come through it. You can put into place all the things that you need to. You have the contacts, all the things that you say, oh, it doesn't matter. You put them in place. You make those contacts. you reassure the world around you. That is why it is so important to be open and honest with the situation. Don't hide anything from them.
Let's think about the future now and what's going to happen for you in the future. And before we go into too many specifics, I just want to raise one issue which I find difficult for patients, and that is what I would call this question of self-monitoring. You know, when you're in a position of uncertainty and your condition might return, sometimes it's tempting to over scrutinize for problems that occur, because you think I'm watching out for something that might be a warning sign.
Be aware of what the warning signs are. Don't be afraid to ask questions. For myself, it means regular monitoring. It is going to be for me for the rest of my life. It's never going to go away. There is also going to be hospital appointments as the spacing gets further apart. Once a year, more scans, more. Ask the questions then. Make note of what the changes are and tell them. If there's nothing that can be done, fine. But if they know about it, if they know there may well come a point at the time in the future when something can be done, you're prepared for it. If there is nothing can be done and it's going to have longer term effects, restrict your movement, restrict what you can do, restrict your sight, affect your thinking ability, your intelligence, putting words together. If you know in advance, you'll find a way around it. That's what's important. It's looking at it in the long term. If you know the expected life expectancy is another 5 years, fine, you've got 5 years to do the things you want to do. If it's 6 months, you've only got 6 months. If it's how long's a piece of string, who knows?
But are you somebody who, one, wants that information, and two, can take it on board?
Yes. I would sooner have the clear information on everything, because then you can only reassure yourself, but then you could do the bit to prepare your relatives if you are going to die, that's going to happen. You could then put in, as for me, put in the positives for when you die, what you can be remembered for.
Mm-hmm.
All the skills that you've learned that you can pass on. And then you're not just a forgotten aunt, uncle, mother. What my mum taught me that. I learned from my parents, and I hope I can pass on the things they learned. Hopefully, my own family will be able to do that.
Now, you're somebody clearly who's not afraid to talk about those sensitive issues, but is that something have you come to that kind of state, or did you, were you okay before this diagnosis about thinking about, your own mortality and things like that?
That's a difficult one to explain. Thinking about my own mortality was brought home to me on the birth of my son. An operation went wrong and I died on the operating table, and that opens your eyes completely. To be brought back, to know what you come back to, and to know when you're dead, wow.
So they told you that there'd been an incident during the operation?
I watched it, and I knew when I woke up what went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd had a reaction to the muscle relaxant, and I died on the operating table. Which they told me, and they explained what had happened. They fought for an hour and a half to get my heart working again and get me back. So mortality and knowing you're going to die is not something I am going to be frightened of. It is something, death is something that is not easily spoken to, and young people, children, it's not talked about. But it's the one thing in life, everybody is going to die. Accepting that everybody's going to die, it's the bit in the middle that's the fun, the joy, the laughter, everything that you do before you get there makes life worth living, and that's what it's all about. Accepting that every minute is so precious, every hour, every smile, everything. Yeah, the nasty things come along and knock you for six, but a smile will turn it. A smile is worth 1,000 tears. That's what you can say.
Now that fantastic appreciation of life, is that something that is intensified by the diagnosis and all those difficulties?
Yes, most definitely. To be aware of your own mortality, it makes you tend to want to do things without putting them off. There's a little bit of you that says, well, tomorrow will do. If you're tired of whatever, yes, tomorrow will do. But to enjoy everything and to look on the bright side of everything gives everything that is bad has a positive side to it. Everything that happens you can learn from, you can use that to help other things, to help other people, to help yourself. And maybe I was brought up to always look on the positive side, but that's the secret I've learned. Pass on a smile.
Well, Hazel, I'd like to thank you for your time today and sharing with us those insights from your diagnosis, and not just the diagnosis, everything that came after that. And some of your attitudes, your outlook, I think is an inspiration for many people.
Hope so.
And I'm sure viewers of this in the future will get a lot out of it. So thanks for sharing that information.
You're more than welcome. If there's anything else I can do, just let me know.